right, it is 12:05, and I believe we are already recording. So we will respect everybody's time, of course. Go ahead and get started. I'm Guerin. I happen to serve as the president and CEO of Tech Birmingham. Obviously, it is an honor of mine, and super excited about the conversation that we have coming up. Just briefly, want to make sure that you all are familiar with Tech Birmingham. I think you all do, but for those who maybe join later or watch this on YouTube, of course, want to make sure that everybody understands what we are trying to do in the ecosystem. I've talked a lot about the changes that have happened over the past 2 years, of course, with the pandemic, but in the past 5 years, we had organizations that did not exist before, a lot of change in leadership. A lot has gone on, and it presents an opportunity for us to really step back and examine what we want to be as an ecosystem and how to level up. And so we've been really intentional about that. And figuring out how Birmingham continues to compete, not just with our near and peer cities, but also on a global stage to bring in talent, to develop talent locally, to make sure that people are connected, that we're serving as that platform, if you will, for folks to develop meaningful relationships and careers in technology and innovation. And obviously you all are a part of that. We cannot do this work without you all. So I encourage you all to sign up as members. Make sure your companies are represented as members as well. techbirmingham.com, kept it simple for you. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, we do upload all of these talks to our YouTube platform. That is youtube.com/techbirmingham. So make sure you check that out. I'll be brief. I am incredibly excited about the conversation that we have coming up. Not too long ago, I had to do a virtual talk for the Heartland Summit. And one of the topics was about the secret sauce of Birmingham, literally what they call the secret sauce series. And one of the things that kept coming up to my mind was resiliency, and the fact that Birmingham is at a place right now where we can make tremendous impact that then spreads out to other pockets of the country. I think about the tech hubs that are mature or those that are significantly emerging, such as Miami. Obviously, we're all familiar with Boston, but there are more cities that look like Birmingham than those that look like Boston. And so we have a unique opportunity to really create the model for the further development, the growth, the resiliency of the rest of the country. And VFA has been a significant part of that. I think about all of the organizations. We're familiar with the startups, kind of comes to mind, but you can find evidence of VFA's impact at City Hall. You will see it at UAB in programs that still exist to this day. Of course, you will see it at startups. And of course, we see it right here at Tech Birmingham. We were fortunate enough to welcome 2 VFA Fellows into the Tech Birmingham family. And I have to give a shout out to Abby for her support and her leadership on that. So we are direct benefactors of the amazing work being done by this organization. So I'm just thrilled and honored that we are able to come together and just share with you all the work that is being done here to celebrate the wins and hopefully drive attention and awareness for what the next few years will look like. So that said, I am going to turn it over to Anna and we will get this thing started. So thank you all again.
Awesome, thanks, Dion. Everyone should be able to see these slides popping up. Let me know if you can't. But thank you to everyone for coming. We're really excited about this, our last thing we're doing this year. I know it's close to the end of the year, so thanks for making the time for our final event of 2021. And so as you all heard, we're learning about Venture for America today. And Steph and I are particularly excited because, as Dion said, this program is the reason that we ended up at Tech Birmingham in Birmingham. So you'll hear a bit about the program itself. And also, as you can see, there are other panelists up here from some fellow perspectives as well. And so for a little context, if you don't know, Steph and I have been working at Tech Birmingham since August. I do more of kind of like programs, recurring programs and member experience, and Steph does special projects and events. So more things like our Code the Classic career fair that happens versus like a recurring Tech Tuesday. So that's kind of our role within Tech Birmingham, but you're going to learn a lot more throughout the presentation. So thank you for joining. We're excited for you to learn more. And I will now introduce our speaker, Abby Guerin Russell, who is someone that Steph and I and Heckmont and Marvelous, our other panelists, worked a lot with in our road to Birmingham, basically. And so if you didn't know, Abby is a native of Auburn, Alabama, and throughout her career has led fundraising teams across the country. So she hasn't been in Birmingham her whole life, but that is her kind of home base now, because she's worked at UIB, Harvard, in Las Vegas at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, in Berkeley at UC Berkeley. And in 2016, she moved back to Birmingham and led Innovate Birmingham, where she worked to grow a strong talent pipeline for the community. And now she works on that flip side of the talent, the pipeline, because she is recruiting the great talent to Birmingham, as the fellows in Venture for America. So now she is Senior Director of Birmingham for Venture for America and has recruited Birmingham's largest class of VFA fellows, has retained over 50% of those fellows since VFA start here in 2015, and has worked with over 50 startup companies every year here to hire fellows. So as we're welcoming her, please know that there will be time for questions at the end. Feel free to drop them either in the chat or in the question and answer feature that we have. I'll be taking a look at those and make sure that we get to them. So thanks again for coming, and please welcome Abby.
All right. Hey, everyone. So between Dion and Anna and all of these fellows, I'm just kind of filling in the blanks for you guys here. But I've got a quick presentation that I'll go through just because I think it really helps to tell the story well of VFA and Birmingham, to understand a little bit of the background about VFA and why we're here and the timing of it. So here we are with, hopefully this will work. All right. So Venture for America is a national organization. It was started just over 10 years ago. This is our 10th anniversary year. And the mission of it was to create economic opportunity in American cities by mobilizing the next generation of entrepreneurs. So when we look at that, we are looking at emerging cities, like what Dion was mentioning about Birmingham. And a lot more cities look like Birmingham than they do Boston or San Francisco. And so what Venture for America does is very intentionally partner with emerging cities that could benefit from a talent pipeline outside of the city, bringing talent here, recognizing companies and community that they likely never would have thought they would have been a part of. And so I'm excited you'll get to hear some of those stories in just a bit. And to give you, let's see if I can, yes, perfect. An example of those cities, we are one of 13, and here are the cities where we operate. So as you'll see, these aren't the typical cities that recent college graduates are moving from or moving to start their professional careers. And so what we've got is a really great collection of emerging cities that have some really exciting startups, all very different and unique, but all coming together in similar stages in their kind of resurgence in the ecosystems. So when we look at VFA from a national perspective, what we have, it's similar, it's a national fellowship model. So we are essentially recruiting fellows from across the country. So when you hear some of our fellows, and we've got actually, I think over 30 different universities that our fellows have come to Birmingham from, but we're really selective, right? Like we want the best of the best moving to our cities and working in our startups. So this past year, we had an 8% acceptance rate. It was our most selective class, our most talented class, our most diverse class. And we are typically around a class size of about 200. Some years a little more, some years a little less, but that's generally about our size. So once we have our national fellowship class, they are going through a month-long training camp. And this experience goes from, and these fellows here have only had an experience of a virtual training camp. We're excited to get back to an in-person training camp next year so that we can really build relationships. But I tell you what, these fellows have digital networking down pat. So when it comes to building relationships across the country on a virtual platform, they know how to do it and do it well. But training camp, covers everything from how to move to your city well, to what do the typical startups look like? What do you, what is the trajectory? What does it look like if you want to start a company? What does it look like apprenticing under? And so I have somewhat called it like a professional onboarding, right? So it's typically a month between when fellows have graduated and when they start work in their cities. And so it's a great time to build the relationship amongst fellows across the country so that you have, when company is hiring, you have access to a national network of young people. And so what we are doing essentially as a national ecosystem builder is recruiting really amazing talent from across the country who's interested in entrepreneurship, either being entrepreneurs themselves, supporting entrepreneurs, or building those ecosystems. And in our cities, we're recruiting really amazing companies that will provide springboards that could use great talent to grow and scale, and bringing them all together. So, you'll hear and see these are not just fellows and young professionals that never thought that they were going to move to Birmingham before, but they're working for companies that they didn't know existed. So we bring really amazing talent and really great companies together, to find their next employees. So along their fellowship program, so they're VFA Fellows for 2 years, meaning Venture for America supports them. I support them here in our cities for 2 years as current fellows while they're working full-time in their careers. Then we're looking at kind of professional development, in-city programming. Marvelous, whom you'll hear from on our panel, is our city lead. So she's really helpful and really curates a lot of our in-city programming and the experiences that fellows want to have and need to have to build themselves as professionals, but also to really network them in the community. And then we also have the VFA Accelerator. So in terms of some national programming, we've got accelerator programming. We have kind of like entrepreneurial training, right? So ideation sessions and those kinds of things as well. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of the national fellowship. At this point, 10 years in, VFA has over 1,300 fellows and alumni in the network. So fellows coming to Birmingham are really well connected. There are over 450 companies that are also a part of the VFA company partnership. We've got 29% of fellows that have started companies, and they've raised $250 million in investment capital. So that's really great. We're really proud of our fellows, really excited for them to start their entrepreneurial journeys, and excited that we now also have our second fellow in Birmingham who's gone through an accelerator program. So Jeff Liu just finished with Bronze Valley, and so excited to see where his fintech startup will take him. Looking at Birmingham, so what we've got here is since 2015, when Birmingham recruited VFA. So fun fact, Birmingham was actually the first city that recruited Venture for America. As you can imagine, in true Birmingham style, we got together and said, what do we need and want? And Dion was likely a part of this conversation. I know many of the people that we work with were, but what are some amazing national programs that would really benefit Birmingham and would really put Birmingham on a national radar and on the map for talented young people? And as a tech ecosystem. And so we recruited VFA here in 2015. And since then, 100 fellows have accepted jobs and moved to Birmingham. So they have all been hired by 55 different companies, which is pretty amazing when we look at the scope of and the depth of impact that fellows have had here. So likely, a fellow or two just maybe didn't know that they were fellows. So that's why we're out here trying to make sure that you're aware and you know. So we've got a really great retention rate for fellows in Birmingham. So essentially what this means, this 57%, is that fellows come to Birmingham, they really enjoy it and they want to stay. So they're staying past the 2-year fellowship. And, maybe that's finding their second, their third job here, buying a home, staying, putting down roots. That's something that, we're really excited about and is something that Birmingham is, as a VFA city, we're really proud of. So this next stat I find kind of interesting because nationally, when we're looking at fellows' interests in cities, so they're looking at what city am I going to move to, what jobs are there that I might be interested in. Typically, only about 3% say that they're interested in even considering a job in Birmingham. I always laugh at this because the bar is typically very low for Birmingham. Fellows from, New York or any of the other cities are like, Birmingham, no, not going there. So maybe 3% say, I'll consider a job in Birmingham. So we end up recruiting many more of those. And so this year, we actually had 12% of the fellowship class. So what this looks like is that between 2018 and 2020, only 3% of the fellows said that they were interested in or would consider a job in Birmingham. But in those years, we got 9%, 8%, and then 10% of the fellowship class. This year, I was really excited that 5% of fellows said that they would consider a job in Birmingham, and we got 12% of the fellowship class. So as Hekmat likes to say, we have the largest fellowship class per capita, which is true because our fellowship size, not just per capita, but our fellowship is the largest, third only to Detroit and Philadelphia. And those are much larger cities. So Birmingham is trending up, and VFA has made it such that Birmingham is a city to consider, a city with a lot of enthusiasm and excitement and a lot of an easy place to network and to get connected. And I think the message that fellows are starting to hear about Birmingham is very positive and is only trending up year after year. So all right. Our fellowship classes. So I think Anna referred to this as, our having recruited our largest classes. So our first class was 4 fellows in 2015. We amazingly got the largest class we'd ever gotten in 2020. We had 20 fellows that were hired to Birmingham, and this year we have 19. So y'all, this is the first 2 years that fellows have not been able to travel to a city, and we still got our largest fellowship classes. That's pretty huge. So, we'd always said before, let's just bring them to Birmingham, let them see what we've got. And, we couldn't do that during a pandemic. And so it really shows the power of our fellows here making a statement for Birmingham and the opportunities here. And, if we're looking at from the 2021 stats, we have 19 fellows that were hired, 13 companies hired those 19 fellows. And of these 13 companies, 77% or 10 of them were new companies. And I think that's indicative of a lot of opportunity in our startup ecosystem here. We typically have about 50-50 returning companies and new companies, but we had such a great number of new companies really interested in hiring VFA fellows this year. And the fellows noticed that we had some really cool companies and really cool opportunities. And, year over year, it's the companies and the job opportunities that we have in Birmingham that are really attractive. So moving ahead, we have also had our most diverse fellowship class and our most diverse led companies this year, which is pretty awesome. And here's that stat about the 10 new companies and returning companies. Just to give you an example of the companies that have hired in the last 2 years, here are several of them. And so you see, we've got everything from, early companies like Acclinate and Willie Goat to ecosystem support organizations like Tech Birmingham, Innovation Depot, but also Alabama Power Foundation and the power company whose employee is working with Techstars, and the Power Foundation, a fellow who's working on social impact work and who was responsible for adding a couple of these companies to the list as a part of the economic empowerment cohort, and giving money to support Black and Brown founders and supporting organizations to hire fellows. So it's a good looking bunch, a great group of companies. And, fellows are loving the opportunities to not just experience work in the company, but, to get to know what it's like to work at other companies and be a part of the community. So without further ado, I want to introduce 2 of our rock stars from the class of 2020, who are going to tell you guys a little bit more about their stories in moving to Birmingham. And if you guys want to just introduce yourselves quickly, just kind of high level, and then we'll go from there. I've got a couple of questions, but if anyone has other questions for them, obviously throw it in the chat, or the question. I think Anna can check it out.
Marvelous, you can go ahead.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Excited to talk about what my experience has been so far with the VFA and specifically in Birmingham. So you can already probably tell that my name is Marvelous Guerin. I graduated from the George Washington University in DC with a major in international relations and a GIS minor. My come to VFA, I guess, experience really stems from, my experience, after studying abroad for a year, my junior year, and, coming back to the US and realizing that I had spent the entirety of my kind of college years really focused on just IR. I kind of had this crisis, within me, just kind of like, what am I going to do? Like, I've only really looked into anything really into politics, and I've never really even ventured into business. So then I got an internship that summer and I worked with a small consulting firm in DC. And I really enjoyed that experience. I was doing all sorts of types of stuff. There were just a variety of projects and tasks that I worked on. And I realized that I really wanted that, similar experience post-college. And so I looked into fellowship programs, and VFA came up as like the #1 entrepreneurship program. I applied, went through the rigorous application and interview process. And I'm here in Birmingham, currently working at VSO Collective. If you don't know who we are, we acquire mid-sized B2B mission-critical SaaS businesses. So if you know of any founder or CEO looking for an exit, you should consider VSO as a partner. And I'm happy to drop my email in the chat if you want to reach out and talk a little bit more about what we do. But that's pretty much a high-level overview. I'll pass the mic to Hekmat.
Thanks, Marvelous. So my name is Hekmat Abukhater. I'm originally Syrian. I have dual citizenships. And 7 years ago, I arrived to the United States. I lived in Boston, studied in Boston College for about 4 years. And then upon graduation, I had a bunch of factors in my life. One of them was Yang fever. And so I looked further into what Yang is up to. And as always, he's just doing crazy stuff, starting a third party in the United States. That's crazy. That's insane. So I looked into the VFA program and I found that it's something that very much interests me. Marvelous and I have a similar academic background. I also studied international relations, but focused on the business side of things. And I still wanted to venture out one more time, do a program like Venture for America to see what possibilities I had in store for me to apply this knowledge of business in a smaller community before I start focusing on international economics or giving back to other communities outside of the United States. So as Abby said, Birmingham was not my first, second, or third choice. And the reason I chose Birmingham at the end of the day was because I found a lot of opportunities that I was interested in that were closer to Boston, where my family was. But from one reason to another, they didn't come to fruition. And I decided, okay, if it's not going to be close to Boston, it's going to be something radically different. It's going to be an experience that has to be diametrically opposed to my experience, my lived experience in Boston. And what better place than Birmingham? You know, you're going from Alabama to Massachusetts, literally on the ends of the spectrum in all of the criteria that you can imagine. So I am entirely positively happy about my choice because as everyone that I talk to and engage with from the Birmingham community, from my fellows to the people that I met from UAB and the people I met in Alabama University, et cetera, even to the folks that have put a mark on me, from Alex Flaxbart from the, Opportunity Alabama, to Greg Barker from the EDPA, to even Bill Smith, our CEO at Landing. Everyone has made it solidly clear that Birmingham is the right place to be. And for someone as young as we are, VFA Fellows, it's an incredible gift and an opportunity to be able to live through and be a part of the quote unquote Birmingham miracle as it's happening around us every single day. So I'm happy to be a part of this panel. Thank you very much, Tech Birmingham, Dion, Abby, for putting this together. And yeah, shoot questions, let me know, ask me for my transition, my process, our adventures in Birmingham, where we will happily answer.
I love it. All right, Hekmat, you mentioned who you work for, but tell us a little bit more about your professional journey here. You know, your professional opportunities, I'll say.
Yeah, so opportunities led to Opportunity Alabama. And that was an economic development company, a startup that I worked for the first 6 months that I was in Birmingham. I had, as I said before, the tremendous opportunity to work under one of the most passionate, one of the most energized people that I know in the Birmingham community, Alex Flaxbart, who himself has hired and retained a VFA fellow. He stole him from Louisiana. So we were very lucky. Birmingham's lucky to have Venture for America fellow Chris Fry. So Alex is a visionary. He wanted to see what opportunities he can use on a national scale to source funding and resources into the Birmingham communities and the Alabama overall communities that are in need for economic development. Tremendous opportunity I had was going to the different counties in Alabama, from DeKalb to Walker to down in Escambia. That's an opportunity that not many Syrians who lived in Boston get. And it just opened my eyes to the ignorance that people in the Northeast, the people in the Northwest have towards these communities in the South. They were loving people that saw someone coming in with Hekmat Abukhater. They literally couldn't pronounce my name, but they opened their doors for me. They welcomed me, and they introduced me to their culture, and they wanted me to see that, you know, they're just trying to live day by day the same way that I was when I first arrived in Boston as a newly arriving immigrant. So lovely experience. I enjoyed it a lot, And then after 6 months, I transitioned into landing, and I worked operations nonstop for about now 7 months or so, 8 months. And I'm happy to say that I got to see one of the fastest growing startups in the United States, possibly the world. Just the day-to-day operations that happen in landing, which flabbergasts anyone who's even interested in startups, in entrepreneurship. So this is another opportunity that I was awarded because of VFA, because of my connections with the VFA community, and because of the attitude that Birmingham business leaders have. So Bill Smith, Alex Flaxbart, Abby, everyone here wants us to not give what we have, but also to gain as much as we can. So yeah, incredible opportunities. Wouldn't change a thing.
That's amazing. Thank you. Well, we're glad you're here as well. So, all right, Marvelous, I'm throwing it back to you because you mentioned working at BISO. And so I want to hear more about how you landed in Birmingham and why and how BISO.
Yeah, that's a really great question. Similar to Hekmat, Birmingham wasn't my first choice in terms of the city. I was really keeping an open mind, to be honest. I was kind of focusing on more of the role and that I wanted out of a startup more than the city. And so I was looking all over the place. I was looking at one point in San Antonio, Miami, Philly, Baltimore. I considered it for a brief period. And really what brought me to Birmingham, I'll have to say, is honestly Dave. Dave pinged me on Match. I don't know if he remembers this, but pinged me on Match about twice, I think. And I kept honestly ignoring it because I was like in the middle of just interviewing with other companies. And I was like, I'll get back to this, this company sometime soon. And so even throughout that process, I ended up responding, and we ended up having a conversation about Birmingham. And my knowledge of Birmingham prior to being here really is just about the history of Birmingham, as you all know, just with kind of just racial, the racial history that Birmingham has. And so that was the extent of that. I didn't really know much about what you all are doing and what we're doing, since I'm now a part of the community, what we're doing now in the entrepreneurship / tech ecosystem. But if you don't know Dave, you really should know him. He's really involved in the Birmingham community. I think he was previously the chairman of the Community Foundation. He was also the CEO of Daxco for over 15 years. And Daxco is a software company here in town, probably one of the first ones, and he's done some great work there. And now, we're here really trying to build the entrepreneurship ecosystem in Birmingham through BISO and acquiring B2B SaaS companies. Really what honestly has kept me here, though, has been my experience with the people that I meet from Birmingham who are so excited and determined to grow the entrepreneurship / the tech ecosystem. Anytime I talk to anyone, it's always, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And it's so much excitement. And I think that that's something that you don't find in other cities like DC or Boston. Sure, the excitement's there, but it's like this collective of everyone feeling like they have a stake and wanting to contribute and wanting to see Birmingham and their city kind of rise to the top. So I think that really has been what has made me even excited, and what has kept me here so far is I want to be involved in that, and I want to give back as well. And I think VFA is doing a great job here recruiting fellows who otherwise, probably wouldn't consider Birmingham as a city, just being that, New York and LA and these kind of larger cities are out there. But, my experience so far has been great, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you have, about my specific experience. So feel free to drop them in the chat as well. So, yeah.
I have one other question for the both of you guys, because since you have experience in other cities, what do you think is the biggest challenge that Birmingham faces in terms of our ecosystem growth?
I can take it, Hekmat, first. Yeah, okay, cool. So I would honestly say from my own experience, and I think a lot of emerging cities, as you guys put it at the beginning of the conversation, kind of face a similar issue of just workforce development. You know, how do you encourage young people to consider tech as a career and to really realize that there's a variety of roles within tech that don't necessarily require you to be a software developer? So anything from a technical writer, a UI, UX person, a recruiter, that there's just kind of a plethora of roles available. So I think that that is certainly an issue that Birmingham faces, but an issue that VFA addresses. So bringing in recent grads into the city to work at startups and learn, what it's like to really, work on a small team and possibly consider building their own company as well. So I think that though Birmingham, and I'm sure everyone really knows this, and I think that there are programs like VFA, Innovate Birmingham are addressing this issue. So I don't think it's a kind of a matter of like just stopping and saying, oh yeah, this is the issue, not doing anything about it. I see a lot of people kind of boots on the ground working to address this issue.
Yeah, I agree with Marvelous, and I would say the aim or the goal here is for Birmingham to reach a situation where it doesn't even need VFA, like it doesn't need to constantly sell itself. So that's the one shortcoming that hopefully we're on our way to, as a city, we're on our way to solve, because ideally the ideal scenario would be folks from within the community are sticking around, staying in their counties, staying in their cities, and just working together to bring up this Birmingham or Alabama miracle in a holistic view. And it wouldn't need telling folks from Boston College, from Northeastern, hey, there's a state called Alabama. No, wait, let me explain. and and convincing them to come down. So I agree with Marvelous there.
Awesome. Thank you both. I actually love that, Hekmat, because that is a conversation that is interesting to have, right? Does the growth of a city, when it doesn't need VFA anymore, right? Like, when has it actually emerged, right? When does it recognize both the talent that it has here and develops it, but also naturally just attracts it because of the great opportunities.
I'd also like to add something, Abby. I just thought of something.
Yeah.
So I also think that it's important for Birmingham, and I say this as a relatively new inhabitant of the city, so I don't think it's quite my place to say yet, but I do think Birmingham needs to decide if it wants to be like a New York and an LA. And as we know, these cities have their own kind of big city problems, or if it wants to be like a kind of mid-sized city and stick with that. Because I think when you look at those two types of cities, they have their own problems, and they have their own successes as well. But I think that needs to be kind of a part of the conversation, just because I think the approaches and the strategy that ecosystem builders take are going to be really important once we've identified, hey, do we want to just be a mid-sized city, or do we want to be a New York and LA, a GC, and have big city problems? I think that's something to consider as well.
Or even Nashville problems with transportation and housing prices, right? Like, that's the next step. How do you grow smart? So one other question, if we have time, but I'm also happy to open the floor up as well. But I want to know from both of you, kind of on the flip side of that, like, what work have you had the opportunity to engage in and have impact in Birmingham? I think that what I hear often from fellows kind of collectively is that Birmingham is really easy to jump in and to have an impact, right? Like, however you want to get engaged, do it, run, go. Like, you're always one introduction away or like a degree of separation from anything and anybody. So where have you felt that you've been able to really dig in the community and have impact?
I can take this one first, Marvelous. Yeah, completely agree with this concept. So like the Kevin Bacon degree of separation of connections in Birmingham becomes minute, especially within the VFA network. You are always less than 2 or 3 people away from the person that you want to get a conversation with, or get a coffee date with. That makes involvement, engagement so much easier than in any other city, like Boston, New York, etc., those mentioned before. So anyone who wants to do anything can do it. It's just that they need to, put their grit into it and go at it. And also, I have found that there's a noticeable lack of bureaucratic red tape. So if someone wants to launch a brand, a product, wants to launch a specific event, I would guess that it's much faster, much more feasible in a city like Birmingham. My personal involvement have been somewhat limited to my church, St. George Church, and as our lovely Jasmine Jennings is on is one of the attendees here. Her and I are on the social impact board at Landing, led by a team that has another fellow, Anna Sol. She was the city lead of the prior year. And we're about to jump into full scale of events and projects that we're going to be working on with the new year. So that's something, yeah, exactly. Dream team. I'm very hopeful for. I know that we're going to do great things with the board, especially with Landing's mission to improve the society, the community around it, not just focus on its own growth. And finally, what's better than the World Games? I mean, that's going to be phenomenal. I've already registered as a volunteer. I know Marvelous, you've also registered. We're going to be translating for folks coming from France and Egypt, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be exactly what Birmingham needs. Not necessarily just like the economic growth of like folks buying sandwiches, et cetera, but it's going to be a wonderful PR lift for folks to realize, oh, there's another Birmingham. There's something in Alabama. And yeah, I think that's something we can also help with in simple acts like running Bama's Giving and bringing folks from all around the nation into Birmingham. It's just small acts of PR other than the economic development engagement that we do with the community.
Yeah, Hekma, I'd really agree with you there that people here just are so open to meeting with you and pouring back into you. And so I guess the question of how do we pour back into the community, the way that I'd answer this is right now, I'm a city lead for the class 2020 or the year 2020, 2021 for VFA. And my role really is to see the completion of a series of kind of in-city initiatives and programs and different opportunities through and communicate between the national team, Abby being a part of that, my other kind of co-leads. We have a community lead and an entrepreneurship lead, and making sure that, we are putting out programs that allow the VFA Fellows to pour back into Birmingham and contribute. So specifically entrepreneurship, being, what are the programs that we can put on that help foster kind of business ideas and get us in that ideation mindset. So stuff like that. And then we have like community programming. So where are the areas that we can volunteer? So the World Games being one of them. And so we're all very much excited about that. But, on a local level, also like, are there kind of community gardens? Are there kind of cleanups that we can volunteer to kind of really take care of the community? So anything from community to to entrepreneurship and kind of oversee and just kind of help those programs be successful. And so right now, my experience really is specifically with VFA, but I have been presented with other opportunities that I hope to take advantage of kind of next year once my term is over with VFA, to really pour back into the community. So yeah, thank you all for being so active. Really, we wouldn't be able to give back if people didn't believe in Birmingham as well. So go Birmingham.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I think, yeah, that's a really great example of not only the opportunity for getting involved in the community, but also building the VFA community and integrating it with other young professionals here in the city as well. I think that's a really key factor in your experience here in the city. So I appreciate it. No, y'all have awesome experiences. All of you guys are fantastic spokespeople for Birmingham. And thanks for helping us change the perspective of Birmingham for young people, little by little. It takes a while, but yeah, I think to respond to Dave's comment, we have a PR issue. I think we talk about that in a lot of different circles. And we are really proud of what we have here. We need to be proud of what we have here and are thankful that you guys are proud of all that we have here and are a part of it.
Yeah, for sure. I think what's so interesting is now, you know, after a year of being here in Birmingham, when anyone ever says anything kind of sideways about Birmingham, I'm like, oop, you don't get to talk about Birmingham. I feel that. I'm like, you're not even from here. But I think that is the beauty of really getting involved with the community and believing in the mission and the visions of the different stakeholders. And I think if people don't believe in it, it's like we're gonna stay where we're at, really, or maybe even go back to the way that it was before. So, yeah.
Love it. All right, I think we're gonna open it up for questions, but two things. I'm gonna put my contact information in the chat, because if you are a company that wants more information about potentially hiring a VFA fellow, hit me up. If you are interested in becoming a VFA fellow, we are recruiting for our next class of 2022. I know I pushed this out in some of our entrepreneurship program pipelines for higher education. So yeah, let's grow the community here. But yeah, let me know if you have questions or want to learn more. I am happy to help. Thank y'all. This has been great. Do we have questions? Anyone?
Dion, you're on mute.
I'm not seeing questions, but I will pass it over to Dion. Thanks.
No problem. I saw a message come in. Anna, please lift up what I missed out on. Matter of fact, I'm assuming you sent that. I don't know. I'm trying to look at the monitor. I have like this huge, massive thing. So it's like, I feel like I'm watching a tennis match. All right. So it looks like we are good to go. So no questions. Thank you, Mike. Definitely great information. Just fantastic. So I will just say this briefly. Marvelous, Hekmat, thank you all so much for believing in Birmingham. Thank you all for sharing your experiences, your perspectives. And I think maybe most importantly, thank you all for giving back. Because you did not have to commit to this place. You did not have to become believers in this place and share your time and your talents with us. So super grateful. And again, I'm really happy that everybody was able to join on this call, because it was important for us to hear that. Dave Gray mentioned it in his comments earlier, right, about this PR issue, this perception issue that we have in Birmingham. And how others view us. It never fails whenever I have an opportunity to talk to somebody that is coming from outside of the region. Hell, even if they're from the Southeast, the responses that I get to me asking them, you know, what were their views about the city before getting here, it's some are comical, some are just downright depressing, right? Whether it's, you know, flatlands and tumbleweeds and our chief export being racism, which is just as completely outdated, but props to them for offering it up in a hilarious way. And they get down here and it's all the same, right? They fall in love with this place and they see the potential of it and so much. So they want to invest in what it is that we're all collectively trying to build here. So, hopefully you all take away from this an increased understanding of some of the challenges, right? But on the flip side of that are also the opportunities. And how do we better position Birmingham and talk about our wins, talk about who we are? How do we better craft that culture that is so compelling and so authentic that others cannot help but to be drawn to what it is that we're doing here? And from the names that are on the calls, that answer will be different, given your own respective lanes. But at the end of the day, it all trickles up to us becoming the best Birmingham possible. So I've drawn on enough. Anna, is there anything that I missed? Stephanie as well. Stephanie is off video, but keep me honest, keep me accountable.
I think there's one other question, Deanna, if you don't mind. Dave posed this, and I think it actually is a perfect follow-up to your comments. And that is quickly, how do we better recruit VFA fellows and young people to Birmingham?
Was that for me? Because
no, that's for all of our fellows, because
okay.
I think that I think it's a great follow-up when we're talking about, like, don't sleep on Birmingham, right? Like, how do companies here do a better job of selling what we've got, right? Like, how do we better attract and recruit fellows or people like fellows?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dave. Thank you. Abby, I can take a quick gander at this one. So from my perspective and my experience as a VFA fellow is that Venture for America fellows, they don't have, if you look at like the Sims character traits, they don't have anything that's maxed with like technical skills or charisma or anything. It's all pretty high, but it's not maxed. The one thing that I would say is maxed for every single VFA fellow is passion. So all you got to do to recruit is make sure that your company, your startup has a feasible, attainable way for that young person to show up on the first day and be able to pursue something that they declare at that specific time to be their passion. And that might change. You might not have that opportunity in your company, which is completely fine. Your company might be narrow focused on a specific task, a specific goal that is defined. And a VFA fellow might not be the best fit, but that is, in my view, the best that the VFA fellows, the VFA cohort has to offer. It's just the ability to work on their passions in a productive, creative way. And when that mixes and fits well with your startup, your company, I think it's a good mix.
I'd also like to add that I think from an implementation standpoint, like what are the actions that we can take right now? I think COVID really impacted businesses, organizations all over, right? And so I think despite the fact that a lot of fellows couldn't come to Birmingham prior to visiting their role, myself included, prior to visiting their jobs. Birmingham still stood out. So I think if you could potentially create opportunities for fellows during the application process to visit cities and then really roll out the red carpet, I think that is going to level up maybe the number of fellows that Birmingham gets. And so I think that is a tangible kind of action that you could take right now, seeing as things are opening up and people are getting more comfortable with in-person events, is to really invite, and this is certainly a VFA kind of action item, not necessarily Birmingham, but if VFA were to have city events, as I know we used to have in the past before COVID, I think that that would be a great kind of solution. And then it would be a matter of like how do we get Birmingham companies and stakeholders to interact with VFA during those events, like maybe hosting us and being willing to speak about what your company is doing and what the mission and the vision is for Birmingham, and so many synergies there. So yeah, that would be when we talk about tangible solutions, that I think that would be something we should consider.
Dion, you're muted.
I swear, you would think I'd led a tech company or something, right? But thank you both for the responses. We just hit 1 o'clock, so but please do not take my brevity for a lack of appreciation. Thank you all for spending time with us, for sharing your thoughts. To everybody who was able to join us on today's webinar, grateful for your time. I misspoke earlier. I said it was youtube.com/techbirmingham. It is youtube.com/techbham. So we'll be posting that up shortly. And we'll also be doing our February one for 2022, lifting up the Birmingham Tech Council. Lots of exciting things going on with that. You all might be familiar with it, obviously, given the work around Innovate Birmingham and Central 6. So stay tuned for that. Again, make sure you're a member, sign up to the newsletter, and we will see you all again next year. Thanks again, everybody.